I'm David Mason. I'm the Director of Public Health for the town of Sandwich, and we've been putting together a series of informational videos for you to discuss protecting the town of Sandwich water resources. And with us today, we have Ed Leonard, who is the project engineer with Wright Pierce, who has been working with the town of Sandwich on the development of the Comprehensive Water Resource Management Plan, or the CWRMP. Just for information, the CWRMP is volume 1 and an appendix associated with it, which you can find on the Town of Sandwich website. So we'll have a discussion about what is the CWRMP and what's within these volumes. What do we have, Ed?
Okay. Thanks for having me here today, Dave. The CWRMP is a town-wide plan which is focused on clean water. What we do when we develop these plans is we go through a process of analyzing the needs that the town has, identifying alternatives and solutions to address those needs, develop a recommended approach to address those needs from the various alternatives we looked at, and then develop a schedule and a funding approach to complete the plan. For this plan, we came up with a 3-phase plan spread out over 40 to 60 years.
Very good. And as far as the development of this plan, it wasn't just yourself. It involved the Water Quality Advisory Committee, and the Water Quality Advisory Committee was composed of the Selectmen, the Conservation Commission, representatives from the Selectmen, the Conservation Commission, the Board of Health, the Planning Board, and some at-large public, public citizens that wanted to participate in this process. So
that was probably 30 or so meetings over the past 6 years.
Right, correct. And it has been a long time in the making. And the individuals of the Water Quality Advisory Committee were looking at a plan that did not focus on infrastructure. They looked at a plan that was broken into phases but utilized other methods of protecting our water resources. And one, as that's outlined in this plan. Well, what's in the plan? What are we looking to protect?
Yeah, I think one point you just made that's important to recognize is the advisory committee said from the beginning the plan needs to impact the fewest number of properties as possible in terms of changing how wastewater management occurred. So that was an important premise from the beginning. The plan itself addresses water quality needs in a handful of categories. So it's coastal estuary protection. Sandwich has a number of estuaries that activities on the land impact. Some of those are on the north side of town, and some of those are actually in other towns on the south side of the Cape. But activities in Sandwich do impact those estuaries on the south side of the Cape. The plan also addresses freshwater pond protection. Sandwich has 12 large, high-quality ponds that are used recreationally. This plan addresses that. We looked at public and private drinking water protection. There are obviously wells, public water supply wells that need to be protected, and homeowners that have their own wells. There are some parts of town where nitrate concentrations are increasing in those wells. The plan also looked at sanitary and aesthetic issues in the historic village and the village parts of town where there are poorly drained soils, where septic systems have had a tendency to fail in the past and have resulted in mounded systems and tight tanks. We focused on targeted economic development that was outlined in the local comprehensive plan that the town's put a lot of effort into in 2009 and has been working on diligently over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And lastly, the school wastewater treatment systems. The town has 4 schools that each have their own treatment system, and those renovation or elimination of those systems and connecting to public infrastructure were part of this plan.
So, and that's an important component too, because I spoke to this in a previous discussion as far as the schools. The age of those plants is an issue based on maintenance. They're becoming costly to maintain. Two, that the State Department of Environmental Protection is looking at or requiring tertiary treatment associated with those plants, which it means a cleaner discharge from those. But what we're seeing in all the school treatment plants is the aging out and just the need to do something. And economically, it doesn't make sense to do something individually. It makes more sense to do something in a combined situation. So as far as in the report, it addresses, as you said, we'll break it down as far as water line expansion, pond protection, dealing with runoff and drainage, deals with groundwater protection, the protection of our water supply, and addressing wastewater issues as far as development of wastewater infrastructure to deal with aesthetic issues and economic issues to allow for economic development. As far as you mentioned that the plan isn't phased over a number of years, what is in that phase one that we'd be looking at? So
phase one focuses on a couple of key points. One is some wastewater infrastructure in town. The proposed plan has 2 small treatment plants, one located at the end of the Sandwich Industrial Park and the other located near the marina. They would each have a small collection system, treatment plant, and disposal facilities associated with them. Of the schools, Forestdale School and Oak Ridge School would be connected to the new treatment plant at the Sandwich Industrial Park, and the high school plant would be upgraded. In terms of water infrastructure, the portions of East Sandwich are where the town has been seeing increasing nitrate concentrations in private wells, and so the water main extensions would run from the existing Sandwich Water District infrastructure to several areas in East Sandwich to put those homes on public water. And lastly, would be to implement some stormwater infrastructure improvements to clean up the stormwater in many cases before it discharges directly into some of the freshwater ponds. The other non-infrastructure piece that's part of phase one is the administrative and technical elements of the plan, from some additional staff in order to manage the overall water quality program, to do monitoring of ponds, to coordinate with other municipalities in the watersheds that Sandwich shares, and to manage just the overall program itself. So those are the major elements of phase one. And an important component of this too is it's pointed out in there that it's an adaptive plan too, because over time things change. So there's the ability to adapt to what changes we're seeing for responding to protecting our water resources. Correct. That's a major premise of the Cape Cod Commission and Mass Department of Environmental Protection's overall program on Cape Cod, is that we don't have 100% of the answers today, but we have enough information to know that we need to start acting now. And this plan is phase one of multiple plans that the town will have the ability to monitor and then adjust its course to hopefully save money in the longer term in essentially 20-year increments or municipal financing increments. So Ed, we've talked about what the CWRMP is, the components of it, and the phase one of it. I think people will say, and we've talked about how to finance this. We've had a conversation with Bud Dunham, the town administrator, how to finance this, and there'll be some people that will say, well, what happens if we don't do this? I mean, so what are the choices here? We have the CWRMP. We can say we don't want to do this, but what happens if we don't do this? What's your experience with that? So from the perspective of water quality in Sandwich, Sandwich contributes to some of the south-facing embayments, which are really past the tipping point in terms of deteriorating quality. And Sandwich has a role to play in helping fix that. In terms of the ponds in Sandwich, some of the ponds are at the tipping point, and it would be terrible to see those ponds go to the point where they have consistent algae blooms or issues with fish kills and things like that. And from a drinking water perspective, it's always important to protect your public water supply. So there's some urgency in just protecting Sandwich's water resources. From a bigger picture perspective, you probably recall a few years ago that there was a lawsuit filed by the Conservation Law Foundation against EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and Mass Department of Environmental Protection for not requiring the Cape to get serious about nitrogen pollution or water resource issues. There was a settlement agreement that came out of that where the courts basically assigned Mass DEP and the Cape Cod Commission with developing a plan. And so there are outside entities, regulatory agencies that are interested in the Cape making action. There are many of the other towns on the Cape are struggling with the same issue, and so Sandwich isn't alone in that regard. And towns are starting to make progress. Some towns already have infrastructure and other towns have none. But momentum is gathering and towns are beginning to make progress. So this is good timing for Sandwich to stay ahead of any regulatory requirements that may come from EPA or DEP.
All right, so there's that, the potential, legal consequences associated with the Conservation Law Foundation, DEP, EPA. I mean, just by example, a simple example is those residents in areas where they flush the toilet and it goes down to the groundwater, and the groundwater flows to the southern embayments like Three Bays in Barnstable or Pompanesett Bay in Mashpee or Waquoit Bay in Falmouth. Our wastewater nutrient loading is impacting those areas in which those individual towns each have to deal with what's occurring, and they're being told the same thing by the EPA, DEP, and Conservation Law Foundation. I mean, so really, potentially, we could have those towns knocking on our door saying, you're not doing enough, and holding us responsible also. I mean, is that potential?
That's true. I mean, they would look at that as Sandwich is part of the problem and needs to be part of the solution.
So when we talk about why we need to do this, that's the really simple thing is we need to address the issues with our abutting communities and to deal with federal agencies also.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Ed. And again, my name's David Mason. I'm the Director of Public Health, and we are putting together a series of information videos for you so that you can have an understanding of what the CWRMP is and how we finance that. And we'll be having additional videos coming for you so you can educate yourself. And again, the CWRMP is on the town's website and has a lot of information in it, and we're trying to break it down for you to simplify what the intent is. Thank you.